This is how you go from $100,000 to $1.1 million tax-free.
So why do all these rich people want to be in real estate?
It's interesting because I don't think anybody grows up saying, I want to invest in real estate. Like when you're a kid, you're like, I want to be a cop, I want to be a nurse, right? But nobody says, I want to grow up to be a real estate investor. But I think for people who are wealthy, it's either, through their job or their business, they get to a point where they realize like they want to have their money work for them instead of working for their money. And real estate is just one of those asset classes that allows them to do that, right? Have your money work for you. And then also, of course, wealthy people, tend to pay a lot in taxes, and real estate is one of those investments that provide you with tax benefits. So I think those are the two pillars, the ability to have your money work for you and also tax savings. Those are two reasons why wealthy people tend to want to invest in real estate.
So you're saying that you didn't want to be in real estate as a kid?
Oh, for me? No, definitely not. Because my grandparents were real estate investors, and I actually grew up, I lived in the same condo community where my grandparents invested in. So my cousins and I, we were like the landlords' grandkids that people didn't like. So we would go around and knock on people's doors with my grandma, because my grandma didn't speak English. So I would go and knock on doors with her and have to collect rent. It's a terrible thing to be doing. So no, but I did really like playing Monopoly though. That was the extent of my real estate experience on what I liked.
I recently heard that Monopoly has more in common with real estate than people commonly thought.
Yeah, I think so. I love that game because it really exemplifies kind of how people build wealth in real estate. So, in Monopoly, it's okay, you land on a property and you have to pay for it. And then you build up these little houses and, little red houses, and then you trade up at some point to a green hotel. And at that time, you can collect more rents. And so it's the same exact concept with respect to real estate, right? You buy a couple single family homes, you trade up to an apartment. And one of the best ways to save on taxes is through a 1031 exchange. So it's basically saying, hey, I started investing a couple years ago. Let's say I bought a single family for $100,000, and a couple years later, now it's worth $300,000. If I were to sell it regularly, I have to pay taxes on the $200,000 gain that I had. But 1031 exchange allows us to sell that property, get the $200,000 in gains, and not pay any taxes. So this is where you see people who, they start building their portfolio with a couple small properties, and a couple years later, they have, an apartment building or something like that. So yeah, it basically allows you to keep trading up and growing your portfolio without having to pay taxes in the interim versus, if you bought Apple stock and it went up in value and you sold it, you're gonna have to pay taxes, and then whatever you have left is what you can reinvest or spend personally.
So what you're telling me is if you're good at Monopoly, you might be good at being a real estate.
Yeah, it's a very similar concept, right, of being able to leverage and scale up your portfolio. We had a client who, we have a lot of clients who use this strategy. In real life, in Monopoly, it's okay, you trade up and then whoever has the most money wins. And that's it mimics real life, because if you think about it, let's say you buy a property for $100,000, it's now worth $300,000, you sell it, you trade up, you pay no tax. Then that $300,000 property appreciates, and then a couple years later you sell it, you buy a $500,000 property. If you do 1031 exchanges, you still pay no tax on that, and then that property appreciates, you now sell it and buy 2 apartment buildings for $1 million. And so, again, if you're following all the rules of the 1031 exchange, then you still don't have to pay taxes. And what the wealthy people do is they keep doing that over and over and over in their lifetime, and they pass away with the last property or properties in their name. And what happens is once they pass away, they get what's called step-up basis. So their kids or their grandkids, now they will inherit that property and nobody pays taxes on that. So because they inherit that at whatever the market value is when grandpa or grandma passes away. So it's really an amazing way for investors to get all the tax benefits during their lifetime, right? With like write-offs and depreciation, scale up, pay no taxes, and then just pass away and leave everything to the next generation.
So if you play Monopoly a lot with your kids, hopefully they'll want to grow up to be landlords.
Yeah, when I play with my kids, my older one he's very conservative. So sometimes when he lands on real estate, he might not want to buy it. He's like, I don't know, I want my cash. So I always have to like kind of train him or teach him like, hey, when you spend money, it's not like you're wasting it, right? It's an investment. So if I pay $200 for this property on Monopoly, it's going to actually generate more income for you in the future. So yeah, it's kind of just like teaching them the concept of how that all works.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about Monopoly is you don't want to hold on to the cash because that's how you lose. That's why I never win.
Let's say you bought a rental property for $100,000 today, and in a couple years, it appreciates to $300,000. And at the time, let's say you decided that this was no longer the highest and best use of this property, you start shopping for other real estate, and you decide that you're going to sell this property that is now worth $300,000. Well, your options are you can sell and pay the taxes, or you can sell and do a 1031 exchange. So if you found another property, let's say it's a fourplex and it's going to be performing even better, what you can do is you can sell your first rental property and 1031 exchange into that duplex. As long as the purchase price of the duplex is $300,000 or more, then you're able to defer all of the capital gains taxes on the first property that you sold. Now let's say a couple years later, your portfolio is growing, you decided you no longer want this fourplex, you want to sell this fourplex and you want to reinvest into a 50 unit, that you're going to buy for $500,000. Well, guess what? You can just 1031 exchange your fourplex. Now, let's say you're selling your fourplex now for $500,000. You can take the $500,000 and you can reinvest that now into the 50 unit apartment, right? So you do this over and over during your lifetime. Keep in mind that when you 1031 exchange, if you're trading up on a property, you can continue to take depreciation to the extent that you're increasing your investment portfolio in dollar amount, okay? And so the whole concept is you continue to trade up, right? We said from single family to fourplex, from fourplex now to a 50 unit to a commercial property. Let's say by the time you pass away, the portfolio is now worth $1.1 million. Guess what? Nobody pays the taxes on that whole $1 million of appreciation during your lifetime. Nobody pays any recapture taxes on all the depreciation you've taken. In fact, your beneficiaries, your kids, your grandkids, they get to inherit that property at $1.1 million of fair market value, if that's what it's worth at your time of death. So you can see how you can turn a $100,000 property into $1.1 million in real estate portfolio without paying any taxes using 1031 exchange.
So what is a 1031 exchange? How do you do it? What is it?
Yeah, so 1031 exchange is basically a tax benefit that tax code gives us, and it just says if you follow certain rules when you sell and buy properties, then you don't have to pay taxes on it. So naturally then it's like, what are the rules, right? So there are a couple different rules. One is when you sell your rental property, first it has to be rental real estate, okay? You can't just be selling like your primary home or something like that. So it has to be an investment property. So when you sell an investment property, you have 45 days to identify what you want to buy. So identify just means, okay, I'm gonna buy, 123 Main Street, 456 Fremont Street, so you identify what you're gonna buy. And then within 180 days, you have to close on one of those properties that you said you were going to buy. So those are kind of like what we call the timing requirements. And then there are the money requirements. So money requirement is if I sold my property in that, my first example, I bought it for $100,000 and I sold it for $300,000, then the requirement for the 1031 exchange is I have to buy another rental or multiple rentals where the purchase price is $300,000 or more. And so if I do that, then I've met the purchase price requirement. There's also another requirement that's like, what is my equity in my current property? So if I have a, $200,000 equity, I also have to have that amount of equity in the new property that I'm buying. So those are kind of just the two, like there's a timeline rule and then there's the money rule. And if you think about it, it's really trading, equal or up, right? Because I sold it for 300, I need to buy something for 300,000 or more. If I buy something for less than 300,000, then that doesn't work as well because then I have to pay taxes if I'm going down in value. So it's basically the government saying, I'm going to give you this benefit provided that you're going to continue to grow your real estate portfolio.
In Monopoly, it goes from house to hotel. Is that the same thing?
In real life,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can sell single-family homes and replace with hotels, but typically speaking, what we see is, single families to maybe apartments and then apartments to commercial properties. But that's also what I really love about 1031 exchange is it's super flexible. So you can sell one single-family home and 1031 exchange into two single-family homes, or just another single-family home, or into a multi-family apartment. You can sell an apartment and 1031 exchange into a mobile home park. We have a lot of clients who sell a long-term rental and 1031 exchange into a short-term rental or a midterm rental. So it's the possibilities are sort of endless. As long as you follow the timeline requirements and the money requirements, it's really your choice, as an investor on how you want to play that game of Monopoly. And, we were talking about how this concept of how you started with a $100,000 property, you trade all the way up during your lifetime to something that's, 1.1 million and never having to pay taxes on that. It's such a powerful point if you look at it in terms of creating generational wealth. You could be someone starting out with just one property today, and if by the time you pass away, you can leave $1 million property to your kids or your grandkids, that's something that could change the trajectory for your legacy, right, of your whole family. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more real estate tax tips.